the Social Impact Leadership Australia program. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Armine Nalbandian, the CEO of the Centre for Social Impact. And I'd like to start, importantly, by acknowledging that I'm joining this webinar from Bidjigal land. The Bidjigal people have and continue to hold a physical and spiritual connection to this land and custodianship of this land and its waterways. And I'd like to pay my very deep respects to Bidjigal elders, both past and present. Also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which each of you are joining us from today, and of course extend my deep respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us for the webinar. So the Centre for Social Impact, just very quickly, is a collaboration between 4 universities nationally. We partner with social purpose organizations across the not-for-profit, social enterprise, government, and corporate sectors to enable them to achieve their social impact. And we do this largely through translational research, accessible tools, and most importantly, our education programs as Australia's largest provider of social impact education. I want to introduce you to Christy Muir, who's the program lead of SILA, as we call it, Social Impact Leadership Australia. Love a good acronym. Christy is a professor of social policy at the Centre for Social Impact at the UNSW Business School, and she's CEO of the Paul Ramsay Foundation. She sits on the board of several for-purpose organizations and is an expert on systems change and capacity building in the for-purpose sector. She's been a vital part of SILA since its inception and is now in her 3rd year as program lead. Over to you, Christy.
Thanks, Armine. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Really great to have you with us. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Gadigal land and pay my respects to the traditional owners of this unceded land, to the owners and the elders of the lands that you are all on, wherever you might find yourselves today, and to acknowledge the fantastic First Nations leaders that we have across the country. I also have the pleasure of introducing you in a moment to a fabulous group of people that we have with us. But maybe just before I do that, a couple of big picture things around how we got here in terms of Social Impact Leadership Australia, or SILA. We started some years ago on the premise of a whole lot of research that basically just showed that there was significant underinvestment in leadership development for the for-purpose sector. We know that the research shows really high burnout rates among CEOs of not-for-profits and for-purpose organisations across this country and indeed overseas. And what we also acknowledge that the research shows that it isn't just about leadership development, but also a lack of permission to spend time on reflection, rejuvenation, and making sure that organisations had some capacity building funds as well. So some years ago, and Leonard will tell us more about this in a moment, we basically pulled together what was best practice from around the globe in terms of leadership programs for the not-for-profit sector, and also did a whole series of interviews with board directors and CEOs of for-purpose organisations across this country. And this SILA is a culmination of all of that research. It was also a visionary culmination before I joined the Paul Ramsay Foundation. Paul Ramsay Foundation, the Vincent Family Fairfax Foundation, and the organisations that Leonard represents, both the Sydney Myer Fund and the Myer Foundation, were collaborative partners to this program. This collective desire was really important around these philanthropic organisations coming together for the first time to actually invest really significantly in for-purpose leadership capability development, and to land us where we are today, which is now in our 3rd cohort group. So we're very thrilled to welcome Western Australian and South Australian people and organisations to join us in this 3rd cohort. Next slide, please, Lisa. So very quickly, the SILA program, and my colleague Karen will talk more about this shortly. It's a national leadership program for for-purpose CEOs and their organisations. It's a 5-year investment by those 4 philanthropic foundations that I spoke to you about. And it is really about advancing the capability of leaders, of their organisations, and the ecosystems that we all exist within to achieve a better civil society. Program runs for 10 months. We select up to 24 CEOs, and this cohort will run from August 2023 to May 2024. There's a whole lot of components which we'll go over in more detail shortly. So really the purpose of this is around lifting the capability and the capacity of exceptional Australian for-purpose leaders. It has these three components that you will all become more familiar with around building self-leadership, advancing organisational capability, and creating a stronger for-purpose ecosystem. Importantly is the intersection between these three things around how we might get there over the course of the program. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Karen, that's going to tell you a little bit more about this from a program perspective quickly, and then I'll come back and introduce the fabulous panel who have far more direct experience in some of this work. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, thank you very much, Christy. So obviously Christy has already covered the why and what, so I will just talk to you a little bit about who this program is for, what the application process is, what the different program components are, and some of the key dates. So the program itself is for CEOs of for-purpose organizations in Western Australia and in South Australia. And it is really well suited for CEOs who are looking to advance their leadership skills, build the capability of their organization, and contribute to positive social impact across the for-purpose ecosystem. So we're looking for for-purpose CEOs who want to advance social progress, demonstrate leadership and commitment to social impact, and who want to build leadership capacity in others and the social purpose ecosystem. I'll talk a little bit about the eligibility criteria now. So as I mentioned, it's for CEOs in WA and in South Australia. And it's open to CEOs who meet the eligibility criteria that you can see on the screen right now. SILA is committed to ensuring diversity of the cohort, as well as enabling equal opportunity for participation. So we recognize the importance of diversity of thought, location, and ability. I know that this is one of the keys to the success of this program. We're looking for a diverse cohort of CEOs, including those who have diverse abilities and varied lived experiences, who work in organizations that service regional and or rural areas, and identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders. And to enable this, the program is committed to ensuring that participants from regional or rural areas can attend, and SILA can cover the cost for their attendance. In addition, we have a dedicated fund that can be expended to ensure your participation if you have a disability or if you have caring requirements such as childcare or other forms of care. I'll briefly talk about the different program components. So each CEO and step-up leader will undertake a series of individual online leadership and well-being assessments. And throughout the program, there will be one-on-one coaching, both for the CEO and the step-up leader, to guide a process of learning and reflective practice. Learning circles will be in place, and these are small online group sessions that allow you to connect with your peers. Then you will attend 3 multi-day retreats. These are immersive learning environments, exploring self-leadership, leading within a complex social ecosystem, and aligning self-organization and systems leadership for social change. Each retreat is curated to the leadership needs of the cohort and is facilitated by the program facilitators. And the retreats provide a short opportunity for the step-up leader to step into the role in addition to the sabbatical period of 3 months. So I've mentioned this a few times now. The CEOs will undertake a 3-month sabbatical, which will be tailored to their individual skills and well-being and their needs. And the CEOs, as far as I'm aware, will develop a learning intentions plan and an organization plan for the duration of that sabbatical. In addition, there's an untied organizational capacity fund of approximately $30,000 for each participating organization. And I emphasize the word untied because that's quite unusual in the sector, I believe. And as I mentioned before, we have the diversity fund to remove barriers for participation. I'll briefly introduce you to the SILA team and facilitators. So you've obviously met now Christy, who's Professor Christy Muir, who's the program lead. and is co-facilitating the retreats with Robbie McPherson, who unfortunately can't be on the call today. He's the program director. Mark Yetikal-Paulsen is the Indigenous lead on the program, and Terry Sola is the lead coach. Now, all four have been involved in the program since its inception and bring with them a vast range of expertise, skills, and experience with the program. This is the third cohort, so there's a lot of experience in the room and within the group for this type of work, and you'll be in excellent hands. I'll briefly mention just the application process. So it's, as I mentioned before, it's open for CEOs from South Australia and Western Australia. The applications are already open now, and they will close on the 23rd of April. It involves an online written application process, but we will be considering video and verbal applications to remove barriers of participation. So if you want to submit an application via an alternative format, please contact our team and we can make this possible for you. Some further key dates are then the program commencement. It starts with a welcome call, which is scheduled for the 1st of August, and then retreat 1 at the end of August, so 30th of August to the 1st of September, and retreat 2, the 29th of November to the 1st of December, and retreat 3 next year in early May. It's also important to note the sabbatical period of 3 months that sits anytime between December this year and April next year. And it's important to note again that participants must be able to commit to all parts of the program, including the retreats and the sabbatical.
Thanks, Karen. And all of that information will be available on our website. So don't worry if you didn't screenshot the dates, etc. We have plenty of information. You can also put questions in the chat, and Lisa will start to pick things up as we go. I am going to introduce some other colleagues shortly who are current participants in the SILA program, the fabulous Jane Hunt, who's the CEO of the Front Project, and Bill Mithen, who's the CEO of Give Where You Live. And they're going to talk to us in a moment. But first of all, I get to pick on one of my favourite CEOs in the philanthropic sector, Leonard Verey. Thank you for joining us, Leonard.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to see all these places, albeit virtually. Kawai, Christy, I'm braced.
So, Leonard, you were one of the founding funders of this program. Why did you decide to invest in SILA?
Look, everything told us that there was a lack of investment in the capacity of the for-purpose sector. And the Myer Foundation and Sydney Myer Fund have long invested in the sector, including by way of some capacity building streams in our grant-making programs. But we knew that more had to be done, and differently, in a way that would demonstrate the value of investing in the well-being as well as the growth of CEOs. So I come to my role from a senior role in the commercial world. I was a member of an executive team. Each year, one of us went on the Harvard Business School Advanced Leadership Program. It was a massive investment in individuals that wasn't given a second thought. And that's my experience of large corporates. But the same cannot be said for the for-purpose sector. So when we were developing our current 5-year strategy, we undertook a study tour. I went on a study tour with a number of colleagues, and we undertook a literature review. And those things told us that underinvestment was a global issue, but there were solutions that were fit for purpose. We met with a bunch of organisations, some of which had programs focused exclusively on sabbaticals, others leadership development programs that offered a more wraparound approach. And we determined that we would return to Australia and build a best-in-class leadership development program, which is what I like to think that we've done. So SILA for us is the flagship investment. in terms of building the capacity of the for-purpose sector for the Myer Foundation and Sydney Myer Fund. And we are in partnership in so doing with the Vincent Fairfax Family Foundation and the Paul Ramsay Foundation. Our delivery partner is the Centre for Social Impact at the University of New South Wales. And we take the view, Christy, that if we ask those in the sector to collaborate, we must collaborate. So we collaborate as funders and we collaborate with our delivery partner. And I have to tell you that unequivocally, it has been a magnificent experience. We've got to know our peer funders better. We chose our delivery partner really well. I can't think of a better relationship. And we are emboldened to go forward and do more.
Thanks, Leonard. I mean, I know we've been running this program for a little while now, and we have had an independent evaluation, which is great, and we continue to do so. I mean, just from your perspective though, Leonard, what has been some of the best pieces of the program that you've seen from your perspective that, you know, in addressing some of those challenges that you mentioned?
Yeah, so as you said, Christy, we'll be hearing from Bill and Jane. They'll have a first-hand experience of that, but from a distance, as it were, I think the connection between peers experiencing the same pressures in an environment that supports learning and reflection helps to build resilience. And you're right. We have engaged the NOUS group to undertake an evaluation of this program. And while it's early days, the evaluation of the program to date has been extremely positive, which fills us with, I think, an equal measure of joy and relief.
Thanks, Leonard. I might bring in our two current participants of SILA. So Jane Hunt and Bill. Hello, it's Jane and Bill. They are two of our 24 current people. Maybe Lisa, if you stop the sharing of the slides so we can see everybody. Welcome. And look, I wanted to make sure we have plenty of time for those on the call to start asking you guys questions, but just as that's a heads up so they can start putting them in the chat. But let me kick us off, and you know, you can fight over who goes first, but can you tell us a little bit about your motivations in applying for SILA? What was it that attracted you to apply, and why did you hit the go button on the application?
Go on, Jane, you go first.
I knew that was going to happen. Hello, everyone, and really lovely to see all your faces and people really interested in SILA. So I was highly motivated to apply for SILA for a range of reasons. Some of it was very personal. I had come out of COVID and was in a pretty rapidly changing environment. So I work in the early years, and the context was the structure of our sector and the policy frameworks were really rapidly changing, which meant that I was really tired after, 2 years of COVID and leading an organisation through that and really grappling with those issues. And so SILA presents that ability to have a sabbatical and to be able to refresh and rejuvenate. And the other thing is I felt isolated coming out of COVID. My peer group shrank, and I really was conscious that there were all these people doing really interesting work out there, and I had no kind of easy mechanism to connect in with them. But then on a more organizational level, we were really motivated as an organization because we wanted to test and support our succession planning in the organization. Like Bill, I'm the founding CEO for the organization. It's really easy to get a bit stuck that you're the only one who can lead the organization. And what we wanted to do was, with support through SILA, put in all of the scaffolding around our step up leader and actually think about what that transition. Can I exist without the organisation? Can the organisation exist without me? And then there was a sort of bigger picture motivation, and that was about the ecosystem. We work in a systemic change framework,
And what I was finding is I was becoming really subsumed in detail and things like that. And I wanted the ability to step back and be able to see the whole picture again. And SILA offers the framework, the conceptual frameworks to be able to do that, and the space and time. Now, I did have one concern, and that was time. But what I found was that the time that I actually carved out for SILA and SILA has given me has meant I feel so much more grounded in my leadership and much clearer around the organisation. So, Bill, over to you.
Thanks, Jane. I think there were three key things for me in applying Christie's, and the first two relate to the sabbatical. The first is the obvious one: who doesn't want 3 months away from work? And I mean, it's kind of everyone. No one really wants to say that, but the reality is, everyone applies and says, "I want 3 months away from work." So, I mean, it's just an absolute truism. Having said that, I'm sure we'll talk about the sabbatical at some point. Sabbatical was a bit harder than I thought it was going to be, but anyway. So that was the first. The second, which relates to the sabbatical, was about, similar to Jane's, succession and succession planning. I've been CEO at the Give Where You Live Foundation for coming up 12 years, and we're a small organisation in a regional location in Victoria. The place is very linked with me. I'm very linked with it, and how, you know, it gives you this opportunity to test what it looks like without me and what I look like without it, which was unique and unusual and, you know, totally unexpected. And then the third was, in thinking about some of that succession planning, we've been doing a lot of leadership capacity building within the organisation with my exec team to try and spread leadership across the organisation. And this just kind of put that on steroids, if you like, because it meant I stepped away for a period of time. Somebody had to step into the CEO role, and then the rest of the exec team had to step in and support that person. I'm currently on my sabbatical. I'm assuming that's going well. I haven't seen anything in the local papers that it's all blown up, so I'm sure we're all okay. But you know, it's a great opportunity, and one that you can't manufacture yourself, really, without the support of something like this program.
Great. Thanks, Jane and Bill. I mean, we have a whole bunch of people watching now and likely to watch later who are hopefully going to apply for SILA. How did you guys go bringing your boards along? We know that you need a support letter from your chair or board member. Can you give anyone any tips as to how you guys navigated that process?
I'll jump in first this time, if you like, Jane. Yeah, so we actually ran a pretty formal sort of process in lots of ways. Christy, the board approved me applying at a board meeting. So it was an agenda item at a board meeting. I'd written a paper and provided the board members with information about SILA. I linked it to what we were trying to achieve around leadership, obviously how it could help me personally as well, and how it was going to help the organisation. Including trying to work through some of the financial ramifications of the program, you know, both with obviously the money coming in and other things that might be created financially from it. So the board approved that. The board I then applied and, you know, went through the process. We then went through a fairly formal process as well of looking at step-up leaders. So I've got 4 exec team in my exec team. They were all given an opportunity or an expression of interest if they wanted to be the step-up leader. The board and I would have ultimately probably decided who that was going to be, but we didn't want to. We wanted everyone to have an opportunity. As it turned out, only one of them decided they wanted to do it, which was probably a pretty good result. So we really linked it. We linked it to the work we were already doing, linked it to our strategy, linked it to our interest in building leadership capacity in the organisation, and then went through a fairly formal process where the board all committed. So it was much more than just sort of ringing the chair and saying, "Can you write me a letter?" Although I did do that as well.
It was a pretty similar process, Christy. And in fact, that was the advice someone from the previous cohort gave me. And I realised just how important it was. So the board approved my application. And they approved the Step Up leader as well and formally appointed her. And the reason I really wanted that was because she needed to feel the full support of the board in her role as well. We also mapped out a transition plan. And I think the other thing is the board is involved in this program. They complete the leadership survey, the organizational survey, and so on. So just for them knowing what time commitment and what benefits to the organization was really important. So very similar process to Bill.
Great, thanks, Jane. And Jane, while you're there, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, I know you guys are on sabbatical at the moment. You've been through 2 retreats. You've had a series of coaching sessions. I know the program isn't finished yet, but can you talk to any of the benefits so far and anything that was, unexpected about what you've experienced thus far?
Thank you. Yeah. Gosh, where to start around benefits? I do think the structure of the program's magic in the sense that you get those retreats with your peer group and the one-on-one coaching and the sabbatical. That combination, I think, is really impactful, and for me has been. The one-on-one coaching has been really important because it helps me pick up where I might have default thinking or assumptions around my leadership role and my practice. And it's where I've been able to really process some of the feedback through either the leadership circles or the retreats and so on. So it's a really important space. Unexpectedly for me, and it shouldn't have been, is just the sheer richness and diversity of the people in the room that you're with. I have learned so much from watching other leaders take up their leadership and the way they think about their leadership practice, their organizations, or the systems that they're in. And that's been able to help me reflect on my leadership and the way I practice and the way I look at systems. And I've found that incredibly important. Some of the sort of other things, do you want me to talk about sabbatical now or talk about that later, Christy?
Let's pick up the sabbatical in a sec, Jane, and let me just hear from Bill about, what are some of the early benefits or not, so let me not prejudice your answer here, Bill, that you've seen from the program.
No, definite benefits, Christy. You're safe. So can I first say I can remember being in this webinar last year as somebody who was interested in applying and listening to it all and going, oh yeah, it all sounds pretty good. Oh yeah, the thing that I haven't got the right words for to get across is just how good it has been. It's been completely exceptional. So the surprising things for me have been the personal reflection and kind of personal growth that I wasn't really expecting that was. I expected there to be personal growth from a leadership perspective, but there's a whole range of other personal growth that's, I think, I've gained from being a part of it. The cohort, as Jane mentioned, the people are amazing, incredible to meet a group of people who are out there doing their work every single day. And I knew a couple of them, but there's 24 of us, so I therefore didn't know about 20. And they're incredible people doing incredible work. It's inspiring to be in the room with them and learning from them. And then organisationally, it's given us one of the big early benefits, Christy, is it's given us this language, this leadership language that we've been able to start to use internally, that we're all sort of starting to use the same language and on the same page, which is making the growth in leadership and the capacity building of leadership in the organisation a lot easier. It's been exceptional.
Thank you, Bill. We promised we didn't pay them to say
No,
these things.
I know I'm going to sound like a paid advert, but I'm not at all. So I can tell you some things that I haven't liked if you want. No, I don't.
I do want to get to sabbatical because there's a question here from Sylvia about learning during the sabbatical and if it will be conducted online. And actually just, from a programmatic perspective, the sabbatical is completely tailored to what you need it to be. And you work with your coach around what that might look like. And also our head coach, Derry Sola, can also help with that. That can sometimes feel a little bit nebulous and a bit scary. It's like, oh my God, sabbaticals are usually tailored to something, or I have to go off and learn something or do something. So, you know, Jane, how did you manage thinking about this sabbatical piece, and what have you actually done with it? I think you're both on sabbatical right now. Is that right?
Yeah, that's why we look so good. Hilarious. One thing I would observe, and it's a bit to your point, Christy, is there seems to be no one way to do sabbatical, because it's so dependent on what you need in for those 3 months and what you want to achieve. So Bill and I have got colleagues who are like, aren't they? They're hiking in remote countries. We've got, you know, people are doing all sorts of ranges of things, because it really is about their personal situation, the context they're in, what they're trying to achieve. I was pretty clear I needed some rejuvenation time. And so I knew that had to be a strong part of my sabbatical, and my coach worked with me on that. Actually, what would it look like to turn off? And so I was really hard line. I don't get emails from work. Everything is pretty, the boundaries are strong, because I needed to practice that. And so, you know, that was part of it. So that re-energizing, this worked for me. I front-loaded time at the beach, because I needed to be back in nature, back feeling grounded again, and getting some rest. I have adored the time I've spent with my family. I was a little bit worried. By about 5 weeks, my daughter said, do you know you're a better version of you at the moment? And so thinking about transition back is going to be interesting. And, you know, what I've been able to do is just follow curiosity around things I'm interested in exploring. So I've explored literature around leadership. I've done webinars from overseas organizations. I've done some more reading on complexity theory. Who knew? Causal analysis, because I can. And then I can think about how those things could apply. And I've done things like go to art galleries and do things that are really nourishing and replenishing. I do want to say, though, sabbatical has been really uncomfortable at times. And the transition points are, I don't know about Bill, I think it's the same for Bill from our conversations, but the transition points, I underestimated them, the transition out. So you'll all find this hilarious. For the first week after getting rid of my email off my phone, etc., I picked up my phone about 100 times a day. And it was uncomfortable, because suddenly no one needed me. Do you know what I mean? All those things. And so when you strip away work, you really are left with the things that are in your head. And that's an uncomfortable but deeply rewarding process, as is the build back, because I'm in the transition back. I go back in 2 weeks and really thinking about how I want to take up leadership in my organization, how not to repeat some maybe unhelpful patterns. And all that is uncomfortable but incredibly rewarding. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane. And that transition back is something that we found with lots of the participants. And it's really interesting around how subtle changes and sometimes more significant changes occur across leadership teams, so that roles and boundaries can be held in a way that's really sustainable and good for the individuals, the organisations, and of course then our social purpose ecosystem. Bill, any comments on sabbatical from you? And then I want to go to the floor to see what questions we might have from the group.
I'm halfway through, Christy. This is week 7, beginning of week 7, so I've still got a few weeks to go. I think I would say, so unplugging is really important. I mean, that's part of what sabbatical is about. And as it turns out, I am completely and utterly hopeless at that. So it's took me a long time to properly unplug. I'm not even sure that I'm still there yet. So I'm doing a trip. I'm doing a trip in a couple of weeks just after Easter overseas. And I think some strong advice would be, if you're going to think about doing some travel, do it at the beginning of your sabbatical, because it makes it easier to sort of step away. It has been uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable leaving work. I found it much more uncomfortable than I thought it would be. When I first was accepted into the program, I just thought, can we just get to the 12 weeks off? And then the closer it came, the harder it became, and it was difficult leaving. It was then difficult letting go, and then I suspect it's going to be difficult going back. So, you know, the 12 weeks of bliss, it became a lot harder than I had anticipated. But it's been amazing. I spent a lot of time with my family, more time than I probably have ever done in the past. In many ways, I've been able to do things around the house and at home that I haven't been able to do, which has been good. I've done a couple of trips here and there, just sort of locally. So it's been a great time.
Thank you. I mean, the interesting thing about the 12 weeks is we did a lot of research into this, and it's based off a program overseas that has been running. Leonard will remind me of what it's called. Leonard, do you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Christy. But I have to say, the last time I saw Jane and Bill durationally was in interview for briefly at a dinner, but not in any detail. And you are very different people, by the way, in a quite a startling way. Anyway, yeah, sure. So, Christy, one of the overseas organisations from which we drew inspiration is the Durfee Foundation, and it's run out of California. And that foundation funds individuals to go on sabbatical, period. That's the whole program. There aren't the other component parts around the retreats, step up leadership, coaches, etc. They just get 3 months off. And we found that very appealing because the literature told us that leaders are, if you were to describe them generally in our sector, they are worn out, they are burnt out, and they need a bloody break. But we came to the view that in addition to the sabbatical, we could better equip leaders for an ongoing contribution to the sector.
Thanks, Leonard. And the evidence is playing out not just with Jane and Bill, but also with our other participants from cohort 1 and the current cohort. Louise has asked a question around how the funding model for sabbatical works. Your board signs up to providing you with the opportunity to take those 3 months leave. It's part of the conditionality of the program. We do have $30,000 of unrestricted funding that the organisation can use for capacity building. Some organisations choose to use some of that funding as a responsibility loading for that step-up leader during those 3 months. Other organisations will use that funding for other things based on the organisation's needs and will cover the sort of step-up leader's responsibility allowance during that time period. Anybody got any other questions? Is anyone online brave enough to ask a question out loud to Leonard, myself, Jane, or Bill? Jane and Bill are the most interesting people here. Craig, I can see you're off mute. Take it away.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, I'm Craig from Playgroup SA, so Chief Executive here for 4 years. Been a absolute blast. Love the social impact. Really exciting program. I absolutely love that. You know, just as an aside, I actually did my master's thesis on building capacity of outcome and impact measurement in the third sector and did international surveys. Got to learn SPSS in about 6 weeks to then run all of the results through, and that was wonderful. But anyway, that's an aside. So I do have a question about the sabbatical. First of all, love it, could do with 3 months off. As well as, you know, full-time work as a CEO at Playgroup SA, I also have a second consultancy role in international development, which I probably, you know, chew up about 10, 12 hours a week on that. Would it be a case of needing to take a sabbatical from both of those roles altogether, or could I continue the, you know, if I made it through into the program? So I think you understand the question. Oh, and we do have a small company, my wife and I, in disability as well. So I do have to do some bookkeeping there every now and then. And I just happen to be enrolled in a little graduate certificate in innovative learning design, but that'll be finished by the end of the year. So
not much going on then, Craig.
No.
Just teasing. Great organisation in South Australia. Look, we probably have to take your question offline, as in thinking about, you know, what would it mean to step away? Different like SILA participants have different roles and responsibilities beyond their CEO. Like, for example, a number of them sit on different boards in the sector. I can't remember, Jane or Bill, whether you hold multiple roles, but did you want to comment on how you dealt with this piece around what you stepped away from?
Yeah, Christy. So good question. I asked exactly the same question this time 12 months ago, Craig. I think, Christy, you said the same thing. We're going to have to take it offline. And I decided with my sabbatical, so I'm chair, I sit on 3 boards and I'm chair of 2 of them. And I, before the sabbatical, felt that those organisations hadn't really signed up to SILA, right? My board had signed up to SILA, the other ones, and I wasn't quite sure whether it was fair on those organisations that I stepped away from them. So I had thought that what I would do is maintain the sort of work that I needed to do with them, which is not obviously full-time work, and step away from my sort of paid role. Having said that, that was a mistake. So after several weeks, I realised that I while staying plugged into anything, I was staying plugged into everything basically, and I needed to step away properly. So I sent everyone an email one Monday morning and said, look, I'm going to have to just completely unplug, because otherwise I'm just not going to get the benefit out of this. So my strong suggestion to you would be to unplug from everything as much as you can without knowing exactly your circumstances.
I would endorse that as well. The only thing I would add is I sit on a number of government task forces as well. And so I really thought about those and what my step up leader might get in those environments. And we approached them and said, we will have an acting CEO. This is her capability. Would you be open to her participating for that period of time? And that meant she got more experience in a sort of broader context. Like Bill, I sit on another board. That organisation's quite fragile. It's scaling at the moment. And so I have kept that one, but I gave them that initial period I was on leave, if you like, or really offline. I said I will not be available during that time. So I did quarantine that.
Thanks, Jane and Bill. So, Craig, you can see how it kind of differs. So that's why we say we'll take it offline with you, but you should still be encouraged to put an application. Tamara, you've got your hand up.
I do. I actually had my EA crawl under the desk because I'm so technologically challenged. I didn't know how to do it, and she didn't want to be up in the view. So she's under here trying to put the hand up for me. But this is just a question for Jane and Bill. As you were speaking, you had identified that you were the founders of both of your organisations, which really means that I'm very sort of similar. I've been with my organisation for a couple of decades now, almost 2 in April. But, I think that there's a lot of passion and you propel your organisation forward with the help of your board and staff. Did you experience any anxiety or fear of stepping away and letting go during that process of sabbatical? And how did you deal with it? I'm a type A, so I'm like, no sabbatical.
Do you want to go, Jane, or would you? Yeah. So, firstly, I need to correct something. I'm not the founder of Give Where You Live. We've been around for a long time, but we were part of the United Way movement. We disaffiliated from United Way about 12 years ago and became Give Where You Live, and I became the CEO at the same time. And we've had a fair transformation since that time. So, not the founder, but a fairly big transformation over the period of my tenure. So the answer to your question is yes. Did I feel any anxiety? Like just so much of it, it's not funny. How did I deal with it? Frankly, not particularly well. I think that, so as I was saying to Craig, my advice is, having been through it, is to really try and get clarity in your own mind before you go into sabbatical, and then make some decisions before you go on sabbatical and stick to those decisions. And I think I was I wasn't clear enough with myself, and thinking that I could do a little bit of this and do a little bit of that, and then it became very blurry for me. So I think clarity in your own mind first, and then make those decisions, and then just stick to them would be my best advice.
Yeah, my experience, so I am the founding CEO, but I was always really clear that this organization needed to be bigger than the founder. And so this tested that, actually. It tested it from the organization's point of view and from my perspective. And I've learned which bits are really about my ego, which bits are not. And I do need to share with you, I think the thing that SILA does that probably hasn't been flagged is the support to the step-up leader. They're not just kind of let go for 3 months without any support. They have a coach, that they have gatherings together and things like that. They have joined up in groups and so on. So they're not just kind of left there. And I wanted to share, I met with my step-up leader and my chair yesterday because we're looking at the transition back. And my step-up leader has totally embraced this opportunity. And I would say has grown enormously in the last 4 months. And I cried because I was so proud of her in being able to take that opportunity and really step into the role. I thought it was extraordinary. I did have this funny moment though, because I said, so, what's your thinking? And she said, I want to be a CEO. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. She said, yeah, but I want to be your job. I want to be in your job, which is hilarious, but gives us an opportunity to think about what does the role look like going forward. But I just really wanted to underscore how much the step-up leader grows in this process as much as you as the CEO.
And that's actually thanks, Jane, and thanks for sharing the piece around the support we do put in place for the step-up leaders, so they become a bit of a group in and of themselves. Terry Solar, who's our head coach, makes sure all those pieces are well integrated and oversees the coaching. I also noted there was a question in the chat around, will the coaching be online? Yes. We have some exceptional coaches. We've spent 3 years crafting these beautiful, what's the right combo of coaches, and the coaches get matched to individuals. And then, yes, the step-up leaders also have coaching. The other thing that has been really embraced by boards is this notion of getting an opportunity to think through succession planning. And also, some people will come out and say, I never want your job, but thank you, that was amazing, and I've still grown, and actually I can see myself as much clearer now in a deputy role or a chief operating officer. Let me pick up this piece of work that I can see that is too much for one role to handle. So it's been a really happy outcome. I'm conscious of the time. I'm not sure. There was another question in the chat about a CEO or equivalent. We understand that different organizations have different structures. And so it's important that when you apply, if your organization doesn't have the title of CEOs, this is the case, particularly in some organizations with Aboriginal controlled organizations where it might be a managing director or a different title. Don't be afraid to apply. We are honestly serious about or equivalent. So it's just a matter of you articulating what that looks like to demonstrate that you're in that role. And if you need a hand with any of that, please do contact us in terms of that SILA address, and we'll make sure the right person gets in touch with you to talk that through. Chris is asking, do you have to take the sabbatical? Yes, the sabbatical is a key part of the program, and the efficacy of it demonstrates that it has real benefit. And so this is an investment by the philanthropic funders in the sector, and sabbatical is one piece to the puzzle. Louise, you've got your hand up, maybe. Yep. Hi, Louise.
Hi, sorry, I just had to get myself off of mute there. Yeah, one of my questions is in terms of the retreats, because I can see there are a couple of retreats that happen during the period. Whereabouts do they happen? Do they happen in South Australia, WA? Whereabouts are they actually taking place?
Great question. They will be in a combination between Western Australia and South Australia, and we will share them around. The middle retreat is a community sort of place-based retreat. We haven't yet decided exactly where it will be. For those of you that are familiar with Victoria or Tasmania, which is our current cohort, we did our first retreat in Melbourne. We did our second retreat in Burnie in Tasmania, and we're doing our third retreat a bit more just outside of Melbourne. In terms of the first cohort, for those of you who know New South Wales, we did our community retreat in Dubbo. So we will be doing something similar where we will share it between Western Australia, South Australia, and we'll have a place-based one for the middle. To make sure that we hold our time boundaries, which is two words you'll get very familiar with SILA, I want to finish on time. So asking each of my three guests to spend no more than 30 seconds on an answer. What is one thing you're really hopeful for that this might help shift for, social impact in Australia? Leonard, let's start with you.
Fantastic. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Christy. Masterfully moderated. Look, I'm a member of a peer group. I know what a difference it makes in terms of support, invigoration and engagement, and people to ask questions of when I can't work stuff out, which happens sufficiently frequently. That's really useful. Two, this program is funded for 5 years. That means we'll have 120 leaders supported through it. The early indicators are that it's looking good. We would be very interested to continue it. The idea of building an increasing ecology of invigorated, informed, and even more motivated leaders motivates me.
Excellent. Thank you, Leonard. Bill?
So, Christy, I think that particularly if you, Leonard, saying you're going to keep funding it, which is amazing, I think it can lead to the social sector being the best led sector in the nation.
Nice answer. Thanks, Bill. Jane?
Yep, and mine would be a sustainable sector that is able to innovate for the benefit of Australians.
Beautiful. Well, look, thank you. We are all here in this work we do, all of us on this call, and those of you who will watch this later, because we're here for a bigger purpose than ourselves and our organisation, and we understand the intersection between that self-org and system. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Please do send in any questions. We have many people on tap to help support this process, and we really can't wait to see the fabulous 24 that we have join us in Western Australia and South Australia for cohort 3 of SILA. So go well and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you.